Soundstripe.
Hi, this is R&B Kitchen. Now, I know what you're thinking. R&B does not stand for Rhythm and Blues. It stands for Renee and Bruce.
That's me.
Today we will be showing you how to make sourdough bread and therefore feed a sourdough starter.
Correct. So, the first thing you have to do is have access to, you have to make a sourdough starter. And there's a number of ways you can do it. The way, I've done it many different ways. I've used grapes, I've used kind of arcane recipes. But the last time I made a starter, I just used the King Arthur kit. And I bought the starter, I bought the crock to go with it, and followed their instructions, and boom, you got a starter. It almost doesn't matter how you make your starter, it matters how you take care of your starter. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. So, the first thing you have to do once you make your starter is feed it at least weekly. Now, I'm going to have Renee bring the camera over and we're going to show you some icky stuff on the top of this starter. Once you've got your starter and you've put it in the refrigerator, you know, now the big commercial shops, what they do is they feed their starter every day because they make bread every day. It's not realistic for the homemaker. So what you usually do is feed it once a week. And generally you'll find that it has this brown liquid on top of it.
Ew.
So that means it's not real active. It's sleeping just like yeast does. And
Because it's alive.
what you'll find is that you'll have to mix this up. Now this is still cold, so it's a little viscous, but we mix it up and you can see the starter is starting to
Oh, that's disturbingly
have the...
gross.
It's not gross, Renee, but you can also already see bubbles. So just like when you proof yeast, you throw yeast and sugar and water together, you get bubbles. That's what we're getting. So this is the first stage of feeding your starter. Now, we're going to take this mixed starter over to the sink and we're going to pour out all but a half of a cup. And there's a little technique to this. So first of all, you want to get some hot water going. And I'm going to pour out, so now we're at the sink, and I'm going to pour out all but about a half cup of this starter. Because you want a little bit of starter and a lot of food. And here's a little trick. You know what makes a paste? Water and flour. And if you leave this coating of starter on top of the rim, it will glue your lid to the crock. So always clean it off with a little bit of water, and I just use my fingers. So now we'll go back to our workstation and we'll add the flour and water. Stay tuned. I've got it at my workstation here, and I've got all-purpose flour. You can use bread flour if you wish. I've got my crock. I've got my spoon. I've got the crock lid, and I've got a half cup measuring cup. And you're gonna feed the starter. Once it gets out of the refrigerator, you're gonna probably feed it 3 times. Once in the morning on day 1, once in the evening on day 1, and once in the morning on day 2. So my flour container already has a cup of flour, and you're going to use a cup of water and a cup of flour and stir it in. And it doesn't have to be exact. So we're going to take a cup of flour. We're not measuring for baking. And in it goes to the crock. And then we're going to take hot water. So tap hot water. So it's usually about 110 degrees. There's a half a cup There's another half cup, so equal parts water and flour. And we're gonna stir this together, and now that little bit of starter that you've had left has a lot of food to eat. And you'll see that within 15 minutes, you'll start getting little bubbles on top of this. And what we're looking for really is foam. You want tiny bubbles like champagne, and you want a little foam, and that's when you know you're ready. Now, the traditionalists will say your starter isn't ready to make a sponge until you can take a drop of starter and you drop it into a glass of water and it should float. The fact of the matter for me is that I really have rarely been able to accomplish that. And sometimes we're on a time constraint. So we're not a commercial bakery. We're just trying to get some decent sourdough bread. And the procedure is a little bit long. I mean, not only do you have to feed this for like a day and a half, once you have the starter highly active, you have to make a sponge. And once you have a sponge, you have to allow that to get very active, because the sponge is made with a half a cup of starter, 3 cups of water, 3 cups of bread flour, and you have to see foam on top of that. And then you go in to make your bread. So, and the bread's gonna take, the first mix, it's gonna take 20 minutes. The second mix is gonna take an hour. And by the time you make the loaves, it's gonna be another hour, hour and a half.
And I know our whole thing is Zoharushi bread machines, but for sourdough bread, a stand mixer is actually sometimes better than a bread machine.
Right. And the reason for that is that it's hard to know the exact activity level of your starter. So if we could have a starter-o-meter and dip it into the starter and say, yep, it's ready, and it's at level 27, great, but that's just not possible. So in this video, I'll tell you about the variances of, wow, that was my granddaughter doing the crazy signal. The variances of making sourdough bread, the traditional way and the way I found that it just works for, you know, the household baker. So that's it. We have now, even while we're speaking, we've got a kind of a bubbly starter there, very big bubbles. And the next time you see us, we'll be feeding this starter again for the final time, and we'll show it to you right after that and show you the activity level. Okay, and then we'll make the sponge. Okay, thanks for watching. And we're back to show you how we're going to make sponge. Now, this is one of the easiest parts. It took us, usually it takes a day and a half to get the starter active enough to make a sponge. And I think I can show you that we've got tiny bubbles, probably you can't see it, and foam. But take my word for it, once you get foam, you're active enough. Mm-hmm. Now, all you do, this is to make 2 loaves. So we're going to use 3 cups of warm water, 3 cups of flour, and about a half a cup of starter. So I always stir the starter first, and then I'll take the half cup here and we'll dip it in, and away we go. Now, always put your wet ingredients in first, otherwise you'll have the flour stick to the bottom. So I'm going to add the 3 cups of hot water. Hot meaning as hot as your tap water can get. And Renee's going to, there's 1. Yeah, you never press the flour into the measuring cup. Now, it's perfect. These measurements do not have to be exact at all, because we're going to make up for any it needs to be more exact than that. For any short fall or long fall of flour or water, by adding flour gradually in the process of making the dough ball. So if we were using a bread machine, we'd weigh the flour, we'd make sure the liquid measurements are perfect, and then we would put it in the bread machine and go away for 3.5 hours, and we'd come back and have bread. But because we're going to be making this in a stand mixer, and I'll be showing you how to judge how much flour to put in, the good flour and water ratio. So this, it has come together just nicely. This takes just a few minutes. So, you know, while your coffee is brewing, in the morning, you could put this together, because it needs to sit either overnight or 7 hours. So we're gonna, at least 7 hours. We want this to be bubbly and foamy, and it will get that way within 7 hours. So right now it's 1:15 in North Carolina, and I think what we're going to do is about 8:30. We're going to put together the loaves, and then what we'll do is let it cold rise overnight. And then, because Renee is school age and I'm not, I'll show you how to bake the bread in the morning.
And I also won't be here for the next segment of the video. Bye!
Bye! I'm back. The hair is a little wild man from Borneo thing. We just got back from a walk, my favorite wife and I. Now, the bread has risen about 2 hours, and let me show you what that looks like. So, it's the next morning, and I just took our dough ball out of the refrigerator, and you can see it has probably at least doubled in size overnight. So you won't see me because it's 5:30 in the morning and I look a fright. However, a little later we'll take this bowl, which I will warm up to room temperature. We will make some loaves, we'll let them rise, and we'll bake them, and we'll see what we get. All right, have a great day. Well, good morning. As I previously showed you, I pulled this out of the refrigerator. It's now at room temperature, and we have enough dough for 2 nice sourdough loaves. I'm going to save this plastic because we can cover one of the dough pans with it. So we're going to punch down this dough. I hope you can see that. And all you do is you put I put a little flour in the middle so your fist doesn't stick to the dough. This is very fluffy. It's had all night in the refrigerator to rise. And you push your fist all the way down in the middle, and then just go around and pull the dough towards the middle. Just trying to get as much air as you can out of this. There you go. Most of that air is going to be gone. I'm going to get one thing. Now, usually I can get this accurate, but I like to weigh my dough balls just so I'm going to be pretty close to even with them. So I'm just using my counter here. Just put some flour on the counter. You can use a cutting board, whatever you'd like. Now you bring the dough out of the bowl onto the counter. And we're going to, right away, because we've already taken the air out of it, right away what we're going to do is cut this in half. I've already turned the scale on. I just use a kitchen scale. And You need a kitchen scale, especially if you have a bread machine, because you want to always weigh your bread. And this is gonna be 2 pounds, 4 ounces, and this is gonna be pretty close to that. I can tell already. 2 pounds, 4 and 4/10 ounces. So pretty good division right there. Now, some people will take these dough balls and they'll push them down, push them down, and they'll knead them a little bit, which I have done, and they'll say, well, let them rest for 20 minutes. I've done that. I just really don't see a difference. So at this point, you want to flour your counter, of course. And I have got the oven preheating to 450 degrees. Now, some of the bread recipes get real complicated. Well, stretch it out to a 9x6 dimension, and then well, all you're going to do is you're going to stuff it in the pan. So let's make something like that, and then you roll it and kind of stretch it. And then we're going to take this pan, and I use this Crisco butter. I don't like the regular pan. I like the butter flavor. And we're going to put it in the pan and smash it around until it looks nice and even in the pan. Like that. Okay? Then you spray the top, because this is going to rise an inch and a half above the pan, and what we want to do is make sure that it doesn't stick to what covers it, because you're always going to want to cover it. Now these 2 loaves are going to go on top of the oven. They're going to raise for about an hour and a half, and then we're going to bake them. So that's all you do. The second one is the same way. Flour the surface, stretch it out. You can just pull it. This stuff it's like pizza dough. You just can manhandle it. And then take it and you're going to roll it, kind of smush it, stuff it in the pan, and I use my knuckles and I spread it out as much as possible. It's elastic, so it's not going to be perfectly formed to the pan. But that's the beauty of making your own bread. It's not going to turn out like store-bought bread, and the Lord knows it's not going to taste like store-bought bread. So we'll spray the top of that, and then I'm going to cover it with, you're going to cover it with plastic wrap. I'm going to cover this with an old tea towel. And we'll see you in an hour and a half and show you what they look like and what we do to put them in the 450 degree oven. Okay? All right, thanks. Well, here you go. So I thought we were recording, but, well, the royal we was not. We were not recording. So what I did is I took this tool called a lame, and I put scores on the top of each of the loaves. And now it's been about 5-6 minutes, and you can see that the bread is releasing at the top. And I think we're probably about as released as we're going to get. So this is the result of a couple of hours of rising, proofing, if you will. And it took a little longer because when I was preparing the dough into loaf shapes, I noticed that the dough was a little bit cold. So what we're going to do is pop these in the oven now. We're at 450, And we're going to go 10 minutes at 450, and then we're going to go 20 minutes at 425. So when I turn it down to 425, I'm going to open the oven door, let some heat escape. And let's talk a little bit about steam. Here's a glass of water, and what I'm going to do is throw this in the oven, and I'm going to create a lot of steam before I put the loaves in. Now, there's a lot of, let's say, controversy about steam, but they make ovens, steam ovens. I mean, Miele makes a household oven that will inject steam, but you really want to inject it at the beginning, and I believe it puffs the loaves a little bit, and then you'll get contradicting research on whether it makes the loaves crustier or makes the crust softer. My experience is that it puffs the loaves very slightly and gives you a nice brown color, and the crust isn't so hard. So that's my experience. So all we're going to do now is, by the way, this is a profile oven, so I've got really nice sliding racks, etc. So I'm going to pull them out. I'm in the middle rack. What I'm going to do is just throw this glass of water in. I get steam. The loaves are going to go on the rack. And in we go for 10 minutes. I'll be back. So we're going to get it down to 425, and you're going to be really surprised to see what this bread looks like. Well, maybe you won't, but you'll see that as we take it out, as we observe it, we're going to open the oven. There's my timer. And you'll see that the bread has expanded nicely. It's browning nicely. But without making that slit down the middle of these loaves, the top wouldn't have expanded the way it did. It would have stayed closer to the sides of the pan. So it works. So back they go, and we're gonna go for 20 minutes. My experience tells me with this oven that 20 minutes works, but I always check with a probe thermometer. I'll pull it at 190, 200, but if it goes 20 minutes in this oven, it's gonna work. All right, see you in 19 minutes. Bye. So I'm back, and here are the loaves, and you can see they're nice and brown. They have a good color to them. The steam really helped them expand. Generally, when you take a loaf of bread, it's not going to rise any more than it did before you put it in the oven. In other words, the heat of the oven is not going to help it rise. But with the steam, it will do so. Now, let me get a hot pad. Part of the reason that we're so brown here is that there's sugar in this recipe, and sugar helps brown bread. But we can turn these out right away. You don't have to wait, and that will aid in their cooling. Now, I freeze bread, and I cannot tell the difference between a loaf that's been frozen or not frozen. I also use this same exact recipe for 2 loaves, where I make either 6 small baguettes or 3 small baguettes and 2 big ones, or 4 big ones, okay? And you've probably all seen those pans, that the large baguette pan and there's the small baguette pan. So the small one you make 3, the big ones you make 2. and I'll make all of them and freeze every one of them. So I'm gonna face you now, and we're gonna review what we've done, and then talk about a few things. All right. So here I am, and let's just review what we did. We took some starter from our refrigerator and nurtured it to an activity level that allowed us to make a sponge. Now, we took the sponge, and once we made it, and you can go either overnight or at least 7 hours until you get a foam on top of that sponge. Then you take the sponge, put it in your mixing bowl, and 3 cups of flour, and you let that sit for 20 minutes. I'll have a recipe attached eventually. And then after that, you put in 2 cups of flour along with a tablespoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of yeast, and a tablespoon of sugar. Now, these are not traditional sourdough loaves like you'd get in San Francisco. We used to live in the Bay Area, and I love that bread. I love the big cragginess of it. I love the taste of it, and I have achieved that very kind of bread. However, it takes a great deal of effort, as I had mentioned earlier, to maintain your starter to the point that you're going to be able to use no yeast and no sugar. And that's a traditional way of making good traditional sourdough bread. You nurture your starter so it's so active that you can take that drop of starter, put it in a glass of water, and it'll float. If you do that, you have starter that's active enough to make sourdough loaves without any yeast or out any sugar. And I just found it too laborious to do that. So I use the yeast and the sugar, and I get good loaves, and they're consistently good in size and in taste, and it's certainly better than eating store-bought bread. So it's a compromise I've made consciously. There's a lot of bread snobbiness out there. I mean, the French cannot use sugar in their baguettes, and their baguettes have to be a certain length and a certain weight, and only certain ingredients, and certainly no sugar. If you take a baguette recipe and add sugar, then you have an Italian bread. So it's, and there'll be some people that will watch this video and go, wow, that's just no way to make sourdough bread. But it's a compromise, and it's a conscious one, so that I can get really good bread. And not as good as I'd like, but it's not worth the effort for me. So it's a conscious decision. So Renee's very sorry she can't be here. She's the brains of the group. She does all the editing. I hope she leaves some of this in, and she just had to go to school because she's of that age, and I'm of retirement age, so I don't have to go to school or work or really do anything except make bread videos. All right, au revoir, and good baking.